My topic today is off the sidelines and into the game. Off the sidelines and into the game. And the question for each of us is, what's calling us off the sidelines? What's calling us off the sidelines? What's calling us into the game of life? What's calling us into the only game that is, the game of life? You know, our theme for the month is the kindness factor. And Gandhi said that the most powerful force in the universe is love. And to that, I would add that the most powerful force in the universe is also kindness. It's also kindness, premeditated kindness. Gandhi said unconditional love. And I'm saying premeditated kindness. And the two of them together go hand in hand. The two of them together go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And so just thinking about kindness and love and just being committed, which is what I've asked us to do this month, being committed to kindness, being committed to love, being committed to being unconditional love and being premeditated kindness. When we make those commitments, you know, anything unlike that will come up. Anything unlike kindness comes up. Anything unlike love comes up whenever we are committed to unconditional love. And that's because once we commit to that, anything unlike it comes up for healing. Anything unlike it within us comes up for healing. So it seems that things in a particular area get worse. They become exacerbated. Situations become exacerbated by just what appears to be the opposite of love, what appears to be the opposite of kindness. And sometimes we get so frustrated with that we will just sort of drop out of the game because it just becomes, it begins to feel overwhelming. When we have committed to love and there seems to be so much hate around us, there seems to be so much anger around us, there seems to be so much unlike love in our lives, in our individual lives, or in addition to being around the world, then it gets to be disheartening, disappointing. And little things, I had someone share with me this week that they've been practicing kindness and how someone cut them off on the freeway, and they were so angered by that, so irritated by that, and because it was kind of a testy situation that apparently went on. And you know what? That came up for healing. That was something that came up for healing. I'm going to practice kindness, and Spirit gives us the opportunity to practice kindness in this situation. Let's say you practice kindness right now. Let's say you practice love right now. And I've shared with you before that I have a friend who used to say that every time she committed to practicing unconditional love, her mother appeared at her house to stay for a while. And she had an opportunity to go deeper, to answer that call, to go deeper and practice unconditional love. And so how are we being called this day to practice unconditional love so that we can stay in the game of life? Because when these things come up, sometimes, you know, we drop out of the game. We drop out of the game. We get disappointed when different things come up in our lives that are unlike the things that we are working toward, that we've been praying for, and that we'd like to have in our lives, that we are desiring in our lives. When other things come up, and they do, when other things come up, then sometimes we get so disappointed. Sometimes we're so hurt. Sometimes we are so despondent. Sometimes we get so depressed that we just take a step back and just sit down on the sidelines. We just sit down on the sidelines. We just sit down on the sidelines. And you know what? We can't do that. We can't do that. Ernest Holmes says that we have to, the thing for us to assume is the attitude that life is not against us. Life is not against us. Life is not against us. It wants us to be well, happy, and successful. And it desires only good for us. But it wants us to stay in the game of life, to play the game of life the way that it's supposed to be played, with unity and cooperation. With unity and cooperation. The game of life, he says, is supposed to be played with unity and cooperation because life is for us. It is not against us. And so when things happen, rather than us feeling like there's something out there, some amorphous force out there that's against amorphous force out there that's against us, no, it's just life. It's just life. Change happens. Change happens. And that's how life is. If change did not happen, then everything would be stagnant. Everything would be stagnant. So change is always happening. When nothing changes, nothing changes. When nothing changes, nothing changes. When nothing changes, nothing changes. That's not the way life happens, because there could be no evolution if there were not change. We could not grow, develop, and unfold if there were not change. And so what we have to do is to realize that we have to be open and receptive to that change rather than sitting on the sidelines. Because when we sit on the sidelines, then we become that isolated spark. We become that isolated spark. You know, Ernest Holmes, as the reading said, that one who separates himself from the divine fire becomes an isolated spark. That's pretty scary, because isolated sparks are pretty dangerous. It can be, because when we get isolated, when we become isolated sparks, we're all over the place. We're subject to all kinds of situations and circumstances. We can get caught up into anger. We get caught up in depression. We get caught up in disappointment. We get caught up in separation, those things that make us feel separate from each other, from God, from life itself. When we become that isolated spark, it's because we are separated. We are separated in our own minds. We are separated in our own consciousness when we become those isolated sparks. And so the thing that we want to do is to discover, how do we get back into the game of life with unity, the way it's supposed to be played, with unity, with cooperation. Well, you know, the first stop is recognizing that there's only one life. Recognizing that undergirding and underlying everything is a unity that holds everything together, that unity that is manifesting as many, but there's that oneness manifesting as many. And so knowing that in order for us to be in the game of life, we have to be a part of that unity. We have to be in consciousness a part of unity, a part of that oneness, and to recognize the need for us to be a part of that oneness. And the other thing that we have to do is to make sure that we are in a place of cooperation and recognizing that we live in a cooperative universe. Doesn't seem that way. Doesn't seem that way in this world that we live in today. Unity and cooperation seem to be foreign words. They don't seem to be a part of our experience. Yet they are essential. They are essential to us living the life that we were created to live. Unity, knowing that we are all a part of the whole, knowing that we are all a part of the one, knowing that there's only one life and we are each individualized expressions of that one life, whether we like that one that we see over there or not. We are each individualized expressions. And as I said, recognizing that this is a cooperative universe in which we live. Just look around us. Just look around us. The sun does not compete with the moon. The sun does not compete with the moon. The stars are not competing with each other to see who can outshine the other. Birds fly in perfect patterns. They aren't bumping into each other trying to see who's going to go first or who's going to lead the pack or who's going to fly to the right or to the left. They don't do all that. They just go in that perfect pattern, because there's that perfect order that is already inherent in their pattern of flight. They already know there's that guidance within each of them that is showing them how to fly this perfect pattern without competition. This is what cooperation looks like. And this is how cooperation has to look in our lives as we go through our lives. This is how we have to come back into the game and see. And the question for you today is, if the game of life is to be played with unity and cooperation, how can I do that? How can I do that in my life? Where am I sitting on the sidelines in my life today? And it may be beneficial for you to see what drove you to the sidelines, what made you go to the sidelines, but don't spend a lot of time there trying to figure out what got you over there. The important thing is to get off the sidelines and move back into the game. The important thing is to get off the sidelines, do what it takes to get off the sidelines and move back into the game. What does it take for you to start to recognize unity everywhere? What does it take for you to start to to be a real player in life, in your own life? What does it take for you to be a real player in your own life, in every aspect of your life? You know, I talked last week about not compartmentalizing. So we aren't compartmentalizing. What does it take for you to be a real player in the game of your own life, every aspect of your life? What does it take for you to be a real player in what we call your personal life, and what you call your community life, what you call your spiritual life, what you call your married life, your home life, your work life, all of that? What does it take for you to be a perfect player? Perfect according to your own perfection, your own individualized perfection. What does it take for you to be a player in your own life? And then how can you go about doing that? And what that requires is for us to be mindful in each and every moment. You got to be mindful, you got to be present in each moment to say, am I participating right now? Or am I sitting on the sidelines? Am I participating in this game of life right now? If I'm not, oh, what can I do? How can I get back into the game right now? And it can start with little things. It can start with little things. And, you know, when we talk about kindness, that's always a great starting point. We talk about kindness. The definition that I love of kindness is generosity of spirit. Generosity of spirit. Generosity of spirit. When we can have a generosity of spirit, when we can have a generous spirit, then we make decisions from that place of generosity of spirit. We make decisions and we take actions from that place. We interact with other people and we respond in different situations from that place of the generosity of our spirit. And so that's where that's our starting point. How can I get back into the game with this generosity of spirit? Because, you know, once we get on the sidelines, then we sit back and we criticize and we second guess how the game is going, and we condemn, and we talk about how it should have been, could have been, would have been, and all that. But we're just sitting on the sidelines doing nothing but carping at it, you know. Or we're doing that Monday morning quarterback thing, where we talk about how the game could have been played, what decisions could have been made. I can't believe I said anything about anything leading to football, because my sisters have not forgiven me for the last football metaphor I made during the talk. So, but Monday morning quarterback, that's what we do sometimes when we're sitting on the sidelines. That's what we do sometimes when we're sitting on the sidelines. But you know what we have to do is get back in the game. We don't have to figure out the plays. You know, speaking of quarterbacks, God is the quarterback. God is the quarterback. God already knows the plays. God already knows. God knows the game. God knows the plays. And you know what? But there's nothing that God can do with knowing the plays and with the game plan, unless there's a receiver. I do know that much. There's got to be, when there's a quarterback, there's got to be a receiver to catch that ball. There's got to be a receiver. And so if recognizing that God is the quarterback and God already knows the plays, all we got to do is get on the field. All we got to do is get off the bench and get on the field. Get off the sidelines, get on the field, open ourselves up, be that receiver. And then let God guide us. Let God direct us. Let God throw that pass at us. And we know, and we will be guided to make the right step, to be in the right place at the right time to catch it. We'll be guided to do exactly what it is we need to do. But we have to be in the game to get that guidance. We have to be in the game to be that receiver, to follow that guidance that God has for us, to follow that plan that God already had before the beginning. God had a plan for each one of us before the beginning. And so just looking at our own individual lives that way, looking at our own individual lives as it relates to this Creative Living Fellowship community, our community life. How do we get off the sidelines and into the game for the Creative Living Fellowship community? How do we do that without being Monday morning quarterbacks? How do we go through our community life without being Monday morning quarterbacks? How do we go through our community lives without sitting on the sidelines, carping about what could be done, what should have been done, how it could have been, shoulda, coulda, woulda? That doesn't work. We need to be in the game. for this to be continue to be a thriving community, for this continue to be a community of unity, a community of cooperation, a community of love, a community of care, a community of connection, we have to all be in the game. Each one of us needs to be in the game. Each one of us needs to get off the sidelines. We have a core group that's always in the game. That's always in the game, but that core group is not this whole community. That core group is not this whole community. That core group is not this whole community. This community consists of so many of us. So many people who have told me how much they love this community, what this community has done for them, and how much they don't like Zoom, and how much they don't like not being able to see each other, and how much they don't like not being able to hug each other. Well, you know what? I don't know anybody who does like that. I didn't like those 14 months that I spent not hugging my daughter. I didn't like those 14 months I spent not having a sit-down meal with her, and we live a mile from each other. And you know what? I didn't like Zoom either. But we had our meals on Zoom, and we had our time together on Zoom, and we connected together on Zoom. And that's how I connect with the staff. Nicole and Deb and Rochelle and I pray together every morning at 9:30. Every morning. We were doing that before we left the building, before we left the property, before COVID. We would pray together every morning at 9:30. And once we came home and started working from home, we still pray together every morning at 9:30. And you know what? I love Zoom for that. I love Zoom for that. Because if it were not for Zoom, we could do it over the phone, yes. But we'd have a different kind of connection. We'd have something about Zoom that gives us that heart-to-heart connection, when we can see each other, when we could connect with each other in that way. So yes, that would not have been my choice. And we could have sat on the sidelines and talked to each other on the phone, or I could call Nicole and Deb when I need something, or they call me when there's something that needs to be done. But now they're used to me Zooming them 900 times a day. They're used to me Zooming them just to say little things, because that's the kind of thing I would have done had we been in the office. I would have buzzed them on the phone to tell them something or ask them something, or the same, they would have done that for me. And once we came home, we could have complained about the fact that we couldn't connect with each other. But rather than doing that, I started figuring out I can Zoom them just as quickly as I could buzz them on the phone. And so it works. It works. It keeps us in the game, because we have to be in the game so that this community keeps moving forward. So that this community keeps moving forward. And so I'm saying to all of you who are part of this community, and all of you who are becoming a part of this community, that something's calling us. Something's calling us to get off the sidelines, to come off the sidelines and get into the game. Get into the game of life, get into the game of growth, get into the game of oneness, get into the game of love, get into the game of kindness, get into the game of God, get into the game of life, get into the game of life. And then let's see how our lives take off in so many different ways. Let's see how this community takes off. I'm so excited about this community visioning that we're having today. I can hardly wait. Because, you know, God already knows exactly what it wants to look like as Creative Living Fellowship. God already knows exactly what it wants to be as Creative Living Fellowship. God already knows, because Creative Living Fellowship is the divine idea in the mind of God. Whether we have a building, whether we are sitting at home watching each other on Zoom, however it is we're connecting, God is in the midst of all of it. God already knows how this works out. God already knows how this works out. And you know what? As this community continues to grow, develop, and unfold, we are the hands of God. We're the only hands that God has. We're the only hands that God has. And God can only work through our hands. God can only work for us by working through us. And God can't work through us unless we're going to be the receivers to that quarterback that God is. God cannot work through us unless we're going to be the receivers. And so with this visioning, what we do is we come together and open ourselves up and make ourselves available, open ourselves up so that God's divine idea can be made available, can be revealed to and through each one of us. Because God has an idea of what each one of us is supposed to do at Creative Living Fellowship. Just like God has an idea of what each one of us is supposed to do in our own individual lives and how we're supposed to do it. We don't have to figure any of that out and when we're supposed to do it. All we have to do is figure out the what, that I want to be a part of this community. I want to come out of the, I want to come off the sidelines and into the game. That's the what. God will let us know the how and the when. So long as we open up to be that receiver. And that's what we are doing in this visioning. We're opening our hearts, we're opening our minds, we're opening our entire being to catch God's vision, because that vision is always available to us. It is always available to us. And so I have, you invited in the announcement, I sent out an email to everyone, and I'm inviting you now to become a part of, be connected to this community, because we are a community of connection. Whether it's on Zoom, whether it's by phone, whether it's by text message, however it is, we don't have to be stagnant and do things the way they've always been done. We do it the way that's before us. We do what's before us to do. Right now, being together in person is not before us. That's not before us to do. So why are we whining about the fact that we can't see each other? And I have a lot of people who tell me how much they love the community. They can't wait for us to get back together, and they don't want to do anything else because we can't see each other. We can't hug each other. Well, no, we can't. No, we cannot. And we can still connect. And we can still love each other. And we can still support each other. And we can still support this community. And so rather than getting caught up in what we can't do and how things can't work, and then sitting on the sidelines, doing nothing but waiting until things get to be perfect, whatever that means to you, let's come together. Let's come together. Let's get into this game of life the way it's supposed to be played, as Ernest Holmes says, with unity and cooperation. Let's come together as one community. Let's come together as a part of the one life. Let's come together. Let's get off the sidelines and into the game of life as one unit, because we are one unit. There's only one of us here. There's only one of us here. There's only one of us wherever we are. We all look different. We all act different. We speak differently. All that stuff, excuse me, appears to be different. But there's only one, because there's only one life. There's only one, because there's only one life. And so I'm inviting you to get back in the game of every aspect of your life. Get back in the game. Look at where you're sitting on the sidelines. And then get off the sidelines and get back in the game. Be that receiver that God passes that ball to in your own life. And then be willing to run for that touchdown, or at least for that first down. I did, didn't I? At least for the first down. My father was a quarterback of his college football team. So I remember, and he talked a lot about football in our household. So I remember a lot of terms and things that he talked about. But at any rate, be the receiver in your own life. Be the receiver and catch that play, catch that ball that God throws to us. Dare to believe that you care. Dare to believe that you can come off the sidelines and that you can play the game of life, and that your excuses don't count. You're not too old. It's not too late. It doesn't work out. Things haven't worked out before. Forget all that. Forget all that. And be willing to play the game of life and play it like you've never played it before. Be willing to act like this is the first day of your life, because it is the first day of the rest of your life. That sounds like a trite phrase, but it really is true. It's the first day of the rest of your life. So I invite you, get in the game. Get in the game. Doesn't matter what quarter it is, get in the game right here and right now. Let's take a breath together. The game is calling you. The game is calling you. The game is calling you. Life is calling you. God is calling you. Answer that call by getting in the game. Let's turn within now for prayer. Yes, knowing that that game of life is always calling us, that game of life. Life, life, life. One, one, one. God, God, God is always calling us, always calling us. That one life, that one power, that one breath, that one activity. God, the source of our being, is always available to us. It is that from which we can never be separate. For that one life is my very life. It is the life of each of us here this day. And this life is dynamic. It is ever moving forward. It is ever growing, developing, unfolding, expanding, loving, blessing. This life, that from which we can never be separate. This life that is always guiding us, directing us, showing us the way, healing us, healing our broken hearts, healing our bodies, our body temples, our bodies of affairs, healing every aspect of our lives. Healing is happening. This is what happens when we remain unified with life, when we remain unified with that divine fire. When we remain unified, that divine fire burns within each of us, healing everything that is unlike it, eradicating anything that is unlike it, fear, doubt, anxiety, grief, loss, any sense of lack, a limitation of any kind, illness, whatever the case may be. Anything that is unlike the divine fire is eradicated by that fire, that fire that is healing everything within us, within our experience. And as we just breathe into it, return unto it, answer the call of that divine fire, we let go of our sense of separation, our sense of isolation. We no longer have to deal and live our lives as isolated sparks. We can be who we were created to be. And this is the word that I speak for each of us this day. Healing, wholeness, renewal, knowing that God is making all things new in each and every life, in every aspect of our lives. And so as I open the circle of prayer, I just pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may speak their names silently or aloud, but you may speak them now. So for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, right here and right now, blessing each and every one. All of those who are affected by the COVID-19, the pandemic, whatever, with their own personal health, God is in the midst of everything that's going on. God is healing every body temple, every organ, every cell, every tissue, every function of every body temple is healed. For the radiant presence of God is moving in and through it all. God is comforting every broken heart from those who have lost loved ones or experienced other losses. God is in the midst of everything. I speak a special word of blessing to the people of Haiti who are experiencing losses from the earthquake that happened there. Speak a special word of blessing of safety and healing and all needs being met. I speak a special word of blessing for our government officials and the decisions that they have to make, knowing that divine guidance is theirs right now, and that decisions are being made from the highest possible place. Decisions that are for the highest good of all concerned, release of separation, a release of division, a release of divisiveness. And knowing that oneness is calling each of them. Oneness is calling each of them, as oneness calls each of us. This word goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day, knowing that God is in the midst of everything. God is everywhere present, and that healing is happening everywhere. Even when it doesn't look like it, healing is happening everywhere. And so I just give great, great thanks for the word spoken here this day. I give great, great thanks for the perfect manifestation of this word. I give great, great thanks for the awareness that God is. For that is all I ever need to know, that God is. For this I give thanks, and I simply allow it to be. And so it is.